But so I'm not sure what it was. They thought it was a loose wire, which they said they fixed. But anyway, we'll move on. So I'm on the backup camera now, so I may not look as fancy, and I'm also obviously supporting a beard right now. Probably not for another week though. I think it's getting too long, and I'm not used to this. But no, all good. So yeah, look, smooth sailing through spring, and I think that's what we're going to find in Q2, Q3 is that actually for most of it, there's not going to be too much negative news. Okay, and I think really, as I've said, the government opened up the way for the next decade of growth. I think they'll be looking for inflation. I think it's coming, and I think that's all good news for us pretty much. So, generally, pretty good news. So look, we'll get into it. Guys, if you find property investment news, if you want property investment news for property investors and you want to look at that and really get a sense for what's out there and how it's going to affect you as an investment, then make sure you subscribe and like the channel. I really appreciate it, and the team will really appreciate it too. So London, worst performing region as UK house prices fall. Now look, the reality with this is, yes, okay, London has been the worst performing, but it's all a cycle. If you remember a few years ago, London was booming and it was doing, much better than most other places. So this is what happens, and this is the normal cycle in things. So there's nothing untoward about this, and yeah, if you're holding property in London right now, then you're probably going, well, do I get rid of it? Now I actually think is the worst time to get rid of it. I think actually you should be holding it. If anything, now's the time to be getting in and buying more, because what we'll start to see is the fundamentals will start to come back. We're already seeing a lot more people. I mean, obviously pubs are opened up, you can go out, so things are starting to move in the economy again, and the economy will get back to normal pretty quickly. So I don't think it's a major cause for concern. House price growth slows in March. Now, look, I don't think this is actually a problem either. If anything, it's because we've got used to, or because we've adjusted to the fact that the budget came out and it didn't kill off all incentive. It actually was a pretty positive. In fact, it was a probably non-event budget, if anything, which, I don't have a problem with. It's quite a good thing to have right now. So house prices are slowing. They're not growing as much. And I predicted last year -3. I thought, I think maybe now we might go positive. But what, I haven't changed it from that. I think -3, +3. I said plus or -5 either way. It could have gone depending on what the government does. The government did the right thing. If anything, it's going to go +5 now. So we might see +2, +3, +4, +5, something like that. In a normal year by all accounts, realistically. The interesting thing is, UK market activity jumps after tax incentive extended. So in other words, this stamp duty land tax thing. The interesting thing with this, I don't think this is the only reason for it. I think people, they feel their jobs are secure. They think that the pandemic's behind them, and they're now starting to make decisions in alignment with that. So actually, I'm not too concerned about that. I think actually this is what what you expect. Yeah. Property prices to rocket as housing supply shortage intensifies. Now, there's two types of housing shortages we're talking about. There's a short-term supply and there's the long-term supply. So above that, UK's chronic housing shortage is one of the biggest challenges the country faces. The government's aiming to build 300 new homes every year to match demand to keep housing costs affordable, but less than 250 were built last year, the highest rate in a decade. Yeah. Now the interesting thing is, but contrary to popular belief, there's not one single housing crisis. Now, what does that actually mean? Well, what it means is that there's not just one housing crisis. In other words, you just can't say 13,000, you need 300,000, you're building 250. It's the type of housing, and I think that's the key to the problem. Is they're not building the right type of housing. And also, I mean, one of the things I love about Singapore is they have a two-tiered system. They have what's called HDB. And they have a system which basically is called, is that even, yeah, okay. Sorry, I just had an update come up from the software. I'm going really well these last few weeks. Look, I think that the key here is they need to address the affordable housing side, and I think getting people to own their own property is 100% the thing they need to do. The challenge is, I think what they are doing is they're giving it away and making people be tenants, for a large part, and giving it away to the big corporates, okay? And that's what they've been doing the last few years. It's eased off now, okay? There's not too many other areas they can go after, realistically. So yeah, interestingly, and just sort of changing tone a bit now, Down values on the rise. Brokers warn stalled purchases. Nearly half of UK's property now. Actually, that was a report from October last year, but we're still seeing down values. And what do we mean by that? This is one of the problems. We've had lots of market activity. We had a property the other day which was 127, and it got up to, I think it was 137,000 above what it was worth. They actually independently valued it at 110. So 110, 127, 137, yeah? And I think there was some 500 in there or something. But the reality is what happens, then it goes to the valuer, and the valuer downs values it at 110. So it doesn't matter. It used to be that it was the market, a willing buyer, a willing seller, normal marketing program, not a non-connected thing, and it would work. But unfortunately, what we're finding now is that it doesn't matter. It's whatever the valuers are saying goes. And what you find with valuers is when the market has been slow, which it has, and then it picks up, they take some time before they actually move with the market. So you get this lag, valuation lag, okay? And therefore you get down valuations. It will take 3 to 6 months, and then they'll see where the market is and they'll start adjusting to it. And the problem is what happened back in the global financial crisis was they started really penalising valuers. I mean, there was a lot of stupid valuations, but they started really penalising valuers. And the problem was, if you got a valuation wrong, that could be your entire career. Yeah, because what happens is you get a claim against your insurance. The insurance doesn't renew you. Nobody else will give you the insurance, so therefore you can't operate in the marketplace. And this is the problem in these regulated fields, is that if you make one mistake, you're screwed. Your premiums go up so high, it just doesn't make it viable to actually work in the industry. And I think that's one of the key problems that people can face. So that that's quite interesting. One of the other things too, so down values is one thing. The other side is this, merchants warns of worsening material shortages. And what we're talking about here is building materials. See, what happens is because the economy's been slow, the production has slowed down, they're not holding as much inventory, they're not holding as much stock, and so that in the supply chain slows the supply chain down. What it also does is drives prices up. So if you're a valuer who didn't account for price increases in your whole thing, and all of a sudden COVID's put you a year back or 18 months back or whatever it is, all of a sudden now you come back to the market and go to buy a brick, and that brick is 20% more expensive. Well, 20% more expensive is a massive amount on a job, and so that's one of the challenges that you can face, and that we are facing now, where you're going to see the prices going up. That's inflation. So you've got this inflation, the sting in the tail of inflation, where prices will go up, and therefore wages will have to go up to keep up, because basically, it's great if you've got debt, because what it means is your debt is actually going to be paid down through inflation. So speaking, of this and that sort of stuff, it's interesting. The one other aspect is, government. This is nosedive or thrive. What's next for the housing market? But basically what he's talking about, and one of the points he made, there was a long article. Basically, government's incentives cannot last forever. Now, there's two issues here. I agree 100%. They can't last forever. Yeah. But the other side of this incentive side is that the printing of money and the continuous printing of money, the Americans have been doing this, for over a decade now, and even longer actually. They've been doing it. And they've just been printing more money and then inflating their way out of that debt so it doesn't, bankrupt them. And that's what a lot of countries are doing now. So, that is actually, I think, going to become the norm, where's that money going? Where's that printed money going? Well, it's going to pay debt. It's going to incentivize. It's going to, effectively, this is what you can afford. Well, now you can afford that because you're printing additional money. Is it good? Well, there was a time when I would say 100% no. But what I'm finding now, the more we look into it, the more we see the results from it, is that a sustainable level is acceptable. And we've just come through a crisis now, and this is my main point with this, is now's not the time to stop the incentives. Wait until the economic activity picks up, and then you can withdraw the incentive naturally. Yeah, but until that economic activity really picks up and you're through it, you need to keep incentivizing. That really, for me, is the role of government now. And they need to be doing that, and I think they are. I think they've done a pretty good job of that. worldwide. Interestingly, speaking about that inflation side of things, former Bank of England warns of post-pandemic inflation. Mervyn King, who's now Lord King, look, basically what he's saying is, that we're being, overly dependent on stimulus, to support the economic recovery. We have. This is, the same thing we're talking about. But most people, or most of us now, are actually pretty much, I would say, expecting inflation, because it's probably the best tool that a country has to pay down the levels of debt that they've taken on. And that's what we're going to see. But as long as, and the key here is, as I mentioned before, economic activity. If they can have inflation with economic activity, then we're in the clear. The problem is, if they have inflation with no economic activity, no growth in economic activity, you get stagflation, and that's where the car's got no petrol, and you're putting the accelerator down to the floor, and it's not going anywhere. And that's one of the problems that can be faced. So it's not a good situation. So you got to play, they're playing and they're banking on a bit of inflation. I think that's what's going to happen. And you know what? They've done a pretty good job of it. So let's see how they continue to go. So just this snuck in. It didn't sneak in. We knew about it. We've known about it for a long time. But to be fair, it did. The date passed, and now non-resident landlords, if you don't live in the country for 183 days, I think it is, then you basically pay 2% higher. So on top of the 3% for a buy-to-let, on top of what the normal stamp duty is, you pay an additional 2%. So if you're non-resident, you're going to pay now. If you're a non-resident who's buying an investment, because you wouldn't be buying a home, that's 5% extra. Okay. Now, is that the death nail? Look, I think it's going to have an effect. It will, people will think again about whether they really want to do that. But I think the other side of it is that it's not actually, because it's still in alignment with what other countries are doing. I don't live in Australia. I'm an Aussie, but Australia makes it very hard for me to go, I want to invest there, because I just don't get any of the benefits that that they do. So realistically, if I'm going to buy in Australia, I don't buy in my own name. And it's interesting because I live in Singapore, so even me buying in the UK, I'm still going to be paying an additional 2%. So that's where that is. The other side is this. Important update for anyone. Now, look, this is basically EICRs. So if you're using, Easy Track, then we've got you covered. We've got through all of them. We haven't got EICRs on every property yet, because obviously with COVID and tenants not letting us in and all these sort of things, some of them haven't been done, as well as, a number of suppliers just weren't able to get them done in time. But if you have a property and you haven't done one, potentially you could be up for $30,000 fine. So make sure you get that EICR done, Electrical Installation Condition Report, done, and then you got to get every 5 years. So the worst thing is, because they had a hard stop date, in 5 years' time there's going to be the same hard stop date, and in 5 years after that, and in 5 years after that, and there's not really much you can do about it. So guys, actually I didn't mention too, if you're listening online and you got any questions, by all means jump. I realise a bit late and probably a lot of people left, but if you have got any questions, you are listening, then by all means put them into the thing, and I'm happy to answer them. But otherwise, you can always, we'll show you in a second, webinars at gladfish.com, and happy to answer them from that. So one more thing. So tomorrow 5 p.m. UK time, we've got investing in property. Did we drop off the cliff? So we're going to look at Q1 and what happened there, and we're going to look at Q2 and Q3 together in terms of prediction strategies, hotspots for the rest of 2021. And in particular, the next 2 quarters, because I think we're smooth sailing for those next 2 quarters. But all you got to do is go to gladfish.com/webinars and pick that webinar, okay? And so I think that that's going to be a really good look at what's been going on. If you've been listening every week to my property news update, Brett's Property Rants, then you're probably going to have a lot of the insights already. But it'll be interesting too, because we've got Ritesh and we've got Ryan talking about Birmingham and Manchester and the hot spots and that sort of stuff, and specifically the areas that we're looking at and doing research in. But look, guys, any questions you've got, you can send through the team. Webinars at gladfish.com or gladfish.com, all about new build property, and supporting you to build a portfolio. Huge amount of education there. Otherwise, easytrack.co.uk is all about property lettings and management. We're managing over 1,300 properties now, and so if you've got a property anywhere around the UK, we can manage it. We can manage it all effortlessly, done for you. We pay your bills. We do an extraordinary amount of stuff on top of what an ordinary agent does, and we do it all from our Lincoln head office. And we actually just moved in on Monday to our new head office in Farringdon, or to our new London office, and we're actually the plan is to put 3 staff there to start off with, who are lettings. So that's happening real soon. We're just about to press go on the plan. Now we've got the office. So guys, that's it for me this week. Any questions, pump them in. Any comments you've got, then put them into the comment section. I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, have a really good week, but there's not a lot of negativity. Not unfortunately. Fortunately, it's good news. So have a great week, and we'll see you again next week. All right, guys, see you later. Bye.